We want to be able to fly anywhere, anytime. But is nature the one thing that can defeat us? A flock of birds brings down an airliner.
You know, I wanted them to hear I love you. One more time.
British Airways passengers cling on over South America. And wind slams a China Airlines plane onto the runway.
Oh my God, it crashed.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
While plane crashes remain very rare, in the world's crowded skies, we now know there are hundreds of near misses. More of us are flying than ever before. And we're carrying our cameras and phones. Even though flying has never been safer, more and more events are being caught on camera, showing what happens when things go wrong. From these amazing first-hand experiences, we can get a glimpse of where we're pushing the limit.
Mr. Captain, this is emergency. Evacuate, evacuate.
Lightning cuts through the sky 8 million times a day. Flying thousands of feet above the ground, planes are a natural target for lightning bolts. The electrical current zips around the body of the plane in just a fraction of a second.
On average, a commercial aircraft that's an airplane in commercial service gets struck once per year.
Modern planes are designed to be lightning-proof, but that doesn't mean that very occasionally accidents don't happen. January 25th, 2013. A Turkish Airlines flight encounters a thunderstorm on a flight to Izmir on the west coast of Turkey.
The whole flight was very turbulent. The plane was shaking all the times because we were cruising inside the storm.
Bertan films the extreme turbulence, but nothing prepares him for what happens next.
Suddenly, a very loud noise and a strong light came in that hurt our eyes. That was the lightning that hit us.
Sparks start to fly from the right-hand engine. The pilot declares an emergency.
I was scared. I know a lot of things about airplanes, so I know that the fire should have gone in about a minute, but flames keep on coming. So that makes us feel a bit more worried.
Stunned onlookers on the ground film the plane as it blazes a trail across the night sky.
At that moment, I thought that we could die.
Oğlum şimdi düşse ne yapacağız lan? Tam üstümüzde. Motor yanıyor abi.
To put out the flames, the pilots shut down the engine and activate the inbuilt fire extinguisher. Modern planes can fly on just one engine, but controlling them does become more challenging. Fortunately, this is a scenario pilots train for, and they land safely at Izmir Airport. Planes shouldn't behave in this way when struck by lightning. Up until recently, planes were made from aluminum. which is a good conductor of electricity. If lightning strikes this metal, electricity flows along the route of least resistance, the metal skin, and exits harmlessly before continuing its natural journey to Earth. But modern planes make extensive use of composite materials that don't conduct electricity well, and that makes things more complicated. Manufacturers have to interweave a thin metallic mesh, only a few thousandths of an inch thick, into the skin of the plane. This system acts as a conductive shield, in much the same way as aluminum, allowing electrical energy to flow through it. At Lightning Technologies in Massachusetts, they pit new aircraft materials against simulated lightning. These experiments should reveal why this metal mesh is so important. First up, aluminum. In slow motion, this is what 100,000 amps, the equivalent to an extreme lightning strike, looks like when it hits this metal.
Aluminum is a very good electrical conductor, so you didn't have to do very much with the aluminum in order to achieve the degree of lightning protection, maybe we should say of lightning tolerance.
Next, a carbon composite panel without the inbuilt metal protection. As lightning strikes, the non-conductive material resists the flow of the electricity through it. This causes it to heat up to several thousand degrees and burn.
Carbon fiber composites are only about 1/1000th as conductive as an equal amount of aluminum. It may get hotter, it may burn, if nothing is done to adequately protect this.
But with the protective mesh, the electricity is transferred before the composite can burn. The lab tests the effectiveness of aircraft designs using 100:1 scale replicas. The lightning attaches to an extremity such as the nose or wingtip. The current travels through the skin before exiting from another extremity. The test is repeated hundreds of times. In every case, the bolt of lightning exits safely. The metal mesh acts as a lightning rod, protecting all on board from the dangerous electrical current, making composite planes just as safe as those made from aluminum. The Turkish Airlines Airbus A321 makes extensive use of composite material with lightning protection. So why did the engine catch on fire?
What I have seen on the news media, for example, indicates that there was a metal fire, a fire that was probably ignited by a lightning strike.
If a lightning flash is hot enough, it can ignite even the metal parts of the plane. In this case, it was the engine's housing. But the reason why it continued to burn for so long after is very rare and still mystifies the experts.
The fire continued to burn because we can see molten metal particles shooting out of the engine exhaust. And that's very interesting. I've never seen anything like that in the past. Had I been sitting in that seat there and looking out the window, I would have wondered, what the heck's going on?
The precise reason why the right-hand engine on the Turkish Airlines flight caught fire is still unknown and under investigation. While this incident is worrying, the fact airliners can fly and land relatively normally on just one engine is testament to the safety of their design, born from years of experience and research.
In aviation, we have 100 years of flying under our belts. This has given us tremendous experience We've been able to modify designs, we've been able to make improvements, but there are always things that surprise us.
Composite materials allow us to build lighter, stronger planes and fly further on less fuel. But then the engineers have to add lightning protection. The aviation industry is always pushing to make planes more efficient, but that doesn't make them nature-proof. And even today, state-of-the-art technology can be brought to a shuddering halt by a single bird. April 29th, 2007, Manchester, England. A Thompson jet with 221 passengers on board prepares to take off. But as the plane climbs out,
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Thompson 253 Hotel. Engine failure. We are continuing with northwesterly and then inbound towards Wallasey. Thompson 263 Hotel, roger. All runways available for landing. Surface wind 070 degrees at 5 knots.
the plane has lost an engine at a critical moment of the flight, when it needs close to full power to climb from the runway.
Manchester, Mayday 263 Hotel. What we are doing is heading in a northwesterly direction. We'd like to establish on the inbound radio 084 towards Wallasey, climb to 3,500 feet, and then we will advise you of our intentions.
Thompson 263 Hotel, runway 09 at Liverpool is also available should you so wish. Keep me advised.
Understood, sir. Just to reiterate, we would like to return to 06 right to Manchester.
Roger.
Mayday, Thompson 263 Hotel. Further information for you.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, it looks like it may have been a burst strike. There's bird debris on the runway as well.
I concur with what we saw out the window and the reaction we had in the engine.
The moment the bird enters the engine is caught on camera.
Mayday 263 Hotel, clear to land, runway 06 right, the surface wind is calm.
Clear to land, 06 right, Hong Kong,
Flying with only one engine, the pilots use the rudder to counteract the thrust coming from just one side of the plane and manage to land safely. The Thompson bird strike is not a rare event.
Declaring an emergency due to a bird strike.
Worldwide, bird hits cause $1.2 billion worth of damage a year.
You know, bird strikes, I think, are something that people are aware of, but I don't think they recognize the severity. We've investigated multiple accidents of all sizes of aircraft that have been brought down by bird strikes.
It's such a significant issue that there are facilities whose job it is to simulate bird strikes on aircraft components. If they don't pass the test, they can't be used on a plane.
Many bird strikes have gone into cockpits on aircraft, so it's a real issue. We do it for airframers, we do it for component manufacturers, and we do it for engine part manufacturers.
Today at Element Testing Lab in Jupiter, Florida, windshields are in the firing line.
To get the most realistic type of testing, we use fresh birds, something that has come from the farm really recently.
The feathered bullet, a farmyard chicken, is wrapped and injected with gelatin to bring it up to the test weight of 4 pounds.
Get ready to load.
The chicken is then loaded into a 30-foot-long gas cannon that can fire it at speeds in excess of 350 miles per hour, similar to that of an aircraft during takeoff or landing.
3, 2, 1, fire!
In this case, the windshield survives the bird strike. Industry standards demand that components withstand impacts from birds of 4 to 8 pounds. To protect against bigger birds would require making aircraft heavier, meaning they would burn more fuel and be less economical. But above an altitude of 800 feet, the size and weight of birds increases, and so too does the risk of damage to aircraft. One such bird strike made headlines around the world. The airspace over New York City is the most congested in the world. Over 4,100 flights pass over the city every day. On January 15, 2009, a flock of birds causes chaos in the skies above New York. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 has just taken off for Charlotte, North Carolina, with 155 people on board. As the jet climbs through 2,800 feet, disaster strikes.
Cactus 1539 hit birds through lost thrust on both engines returning back towards LaGuardia.
A flock of Canada geese that thrive around the Hudson River in New York City completely disabled both engines. With few alternatives, the captain of the plane, Chesley Sully Sullenberger, makes a drastic decision.
Cactus 1529, we can get it for you. Do you want to try to land runway 13?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280. You can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
Air traffic controller Patrick Harton has never received a call like it.
Up to this point in my career, I had never heard of a commercial airline successfully pulling off a water landing. My mind didn't really want to comprehend the words that he was saying. That's why I said, say again. I asked him to repeat himself.
210, 2718. I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
For Captain Chesley Sullenberger, it's the biggest challenge of his life.
We were descending much more rapidly than for a normal landing because we didn't have engine thrust to make it a more gradual, a flatter approach. The final critical maneuver was to choose the height at which I would begin raising the nose to trade some of our forward speed for a reduced rate of descent and to achieve the proper nose-up attitude for touchdown.
If Captain Sullenberger can't keep the nose of the aircraft out of the water until the last second, the chances of survival are slim. He must also keep the wings perfectly level on impact. If one clips the water first, the plane will cartwheel down the river, breaking up along the way.
We were descending at the rate, if you were in a hotel elevator, 2 floors per second. I knew it'd be a hard landing, I just didn't know how hard.
Just moments before attempting to crash land on the Hudson River, the captain of a U.S. Airways flight makes an announcement no passenger wants to hear.
I said, this is the captain, brace for impact.
When I heard that, all the hope that I had up to that point left.
You feel fear, you feel probably every emotion imaginable of, this is the end, now what do I do? I had no earthly idea what was going on. I started thinking about my family, my kids. You know, I wanted them to hear I love you one more time.
Just 208 seconds after birds caused both engines to lose thrust, Flight 1549 crash lands on the Hudson River.
And then the plane hit the water. And it was extremely violent and sounded like we hit concrete. Then the plane came to a stop and kind of bobbed for a second. First thing I did was flipping my hands over and over, wiggling my fingers, looking at my feet, and I realized that I was in one piece still. And I was just, you know, almost like in shock for a second, like, is this real? You know, am I really in one piece? And then I started hearing seat belts coming unlatched. And I realized that, you know, hey, we're in the water. We still got to get out.
The air in the cabin and fuel tanks should keep the plane afloat, but the impact has ripped open the underbelly. Near freezing water starts flooding the plane. The passengers must evacuate fast.
I could hear people saying, go to the wing, go to the wing. And it was at that point that the water was probably close to my waist or so. But once I got out onto the wing, I was standing there with all the other passengers around me. We were kind of huddling, trying to stay warm. People were encouraging each other, cracking jokes. It was at that moment that I knew we were going to be okay.
It was the most intense crisis of my life. Although I've got to say that once we had landed, the sun low in the southwest was illuminating in stark relief the skyline of Manhattan immediately before us. And it was a brilliant image. That was the first moment of any kind of reflection at all, is that we had landed successfully and Manhattan was just right there, close enough almost to touch.
Security cameras and cell phones record the aftermath as a fleet of commuter ferries, tourist boats, and emergency craft get all passengers to dry land. After losing contact with the stricken plane, the good news is slow to reach air traffic controller Patrick Harton, who assumes the worst.
I sat there for a good 45 minutes, assuming everybody probably died. And I was the last one that actually talked to these people, this pilot, and I'd be the last one to talk to him alive. Finally, someone popped their head in and said, hey, Patty, I think everyone survived. I'm here assuming the worst. And then someone tells me everyone survived. It's awesome. But it's kind of hard to believe, too. Like, really? That just happened? And it was like this incredible weight had been lifted off my shoulder, too.
Today, the plane is on display at a museum in Charlotte, the city it was flying to. The fact that everyone survived is all the more miraculous when you survey the extent of the damage and consider that all of this came about thanks to a flock of birds. But exactly how can something as small and seemingly benign as a bird bring down a state-of-the-art jetliner? When an aircraft's engine is operating at full capacity, the blades spin at almost the speed of sound, sucking in vast quantities of air. If a bird strikes one of these blades, it can shatter. Shrapnel and bird debris can then be sucked into the core of the engine, where it can damage the turbine or cause the engine to flame out and die. The official report confirmed that at least one 8-pound bird had been sucked straight into the core of each of the engines, causing them to fail. The report also stated that the size and number of the birds ingested by the accident engines well exceeded the current bird ingestion certification standards.
I think what people aren't really thinking so much about with respect to birds is, especially with the migratory birds, we're seeing more birds and bigger birds. And so this is an issue we really do need to be aware of.
Despite safety measures, there are currently more reported bird strikes in America than ever before. It seems whatever we do, we will never be 100% safe. There are now 38 million flights a year, 3 billion passengers. The schedule is king. But from the moment we step on board, nature may have other plans. June 18th, 2012. A British Airways flight from Buenos Aires to London is 1 hour into an 11-hour journey. The turbulence is severe. The captain ends the in-flight service. Passengers are told to sit down and fasten their seatbelts. Turbulence is an unsteady movement of air that often strikes without warning and violently bumps planes up and down and side to side. At this moment, there is little a pilot can do other than fly through it. The heavy turbulence continues for 10 minutes, until finally the plane reaches smooth air. On landing in London, the pilot tells passengers it was the worst he had experienced in his 30-year career. Planes today are designed to withstand stresses far greater than they experience when flying through extreme turbulence. But why in a billion-dollar high-tech industry was the pilot unable to avoid the violent winds? The Air Traffic Control Command Center runs American airspace. Their job is to control the tens of thousands of planes in operation in the busiest skies on the planet, safely and efficiently. Key to this is managing a record number of flights while dealing with a constantly changing weather scenario. And that process is led by two men, the top guns of weather forecasting.
You can see there's snow showers.
Brandon Smith and Mike Eckert.
Large area thunderstorms, snow.
Their weather analysis can cause the FAA to shut down airspace at a moment's notice. Safety has to come first, and you can't change the weather.
The snow showers could be a bit heavy at times, especially late morning and early.
Basically, every decision for all air traffic across the country is made in this building, and in particular on this operations floor.
The data here can also be used to help in accident investigations. Could their satellite and radar archives reveal why the British Airways flight was so badly affected by turbulence?
What we see is winds that are about 150 knots. There's also a forecast for thunderstorms. The bases are at, let's say, 3,000 or 4,000 feet, so they'd go all the way up to 40,000. So that encompasses the whole vertical distance of where the airplanes are going to fly.
Giant storms like these dwarf planes, and sometimes it's impossible to fly over or around them. This seems to have been the case for this flight, but in some instances, pilots can't even see turbulence coming, and that's because forecasters have blind spots.
I think there's a misconception that the pilot has all the information he needs to know at the beginning of his flight. There's significant areas in the world where there's a lack of weather information. We just don't have the same coverage as we have here in the United States. Oceans are an excellent example of that.
Incredibly, even in this day and age, pilots flying over oceans only have limited weather information, and that can leave them flying into trouble. In 2009, this Kuwait Airways plane hit sudden and unexpected turbulence. This kind of incident is all too common because, crashes aside, turbulence, whether over land or sea, causes more aircraft damage and more passenger injuries than any other aviation incident.
Let me see your face, yeah.
The industry is currently pumping money into the development of systems to dampen and forecast turbulence. But time is running out because turbulence over the Atlantic is predicted to get worse as global warming causes temperatures to rise. Our insatiable desire to fly anywhere, anytime, doesn't just threaten us high in the skies. Closer to the ground, sudden violent winds can make landing an airliner extremely dangerous. Rapidly changing and unpredictable wind currents, known as wind shear, is the most dangerous weather phenomenon a pilot can encounter during approach and landing. Unlike thunder and lightning, you can't see it, you can't hear it, and it can suddenly force a plane toward the ground, giving the pilot very little time to react. There are different types of wind shear, but there's one that pilots fear most. It's known as a microburst. As the plane approaches a microburst, the flow of air over the wings increases. This causes the airspeed to increase and gives the plane greater lift. Now needing less power to generate the same amount of lift, a pilot can be fooled into throttling back the engines. But then, without warning, the wind changes direction. The headwind turns into a downdraft and then a tailwind. This causes the plane to drop rapidly. If the wind is strong enough and the plane is close enough to the ground, the plane slams into the runway. In a simulator, Captain Piers Applegarth is going to demonstrate how dangerous wind shear can be.
So at the moment, we're approaching about 1,400 feet. The autopilot's controlling it quite nicely. The speed's just slightly high, but it's correcting. And the rate of descent's about 700 feet a minute. So that's all fairly normal.
But now wind shear hits. Piers reacts immediately to abort the landing.
So I'm actually going to start my wind shear go around. I've put full power on. Now I'm descending like mad, but I've still got the power on, full power. I'm climbing very slightly. Now I'm descending.
In this case, a quick reaction gets him out of danger.
We're now out of it. I've got a good rate of climb. I'm going to put the autopilots back in and correct the power, and we're now safely climbing away. Whenever you encounter wind shear, pretty much the only option you've got is to abort the landing, and that's using the process of applying the full power, pitching up the aeroplane, and getting away from the wind shear.
But aborting a landing is not a straightforward decision to make. Naturally, safety has to be the first priority, but some pilots do feel other factors creeping into their decision.
If you're flying an approach in demanding circumstances and you are considering the fact that you may have to go around to carry out a missed approach, the very fact that at the back of your mind you have pressure from the airline management encouraging you not to go around does have an effect on your decision-making process and will have implications.
The new pressures on pilots are to maintain the schedule. For example, we publish for everyone to read the on-time arrivals and departures.
Smack in the middle of a typhoon zone, Hong Kong's Chek Lap Kok Airport suffers from extreme weather, including wind shear. August 22nd, 1999. Typhoon Sam hits Hong Kong. Winds of up to 36 knots batter a China Airlines flight as it approaches the runway. On board are 315 passengers and crew.
Let's see if we can make it. It's a bit shaky there.
A bit shaky?
Yeah.
This guy's having a hard
Oh
time.
my God! Oh my God! It's crashed!
Oh my God.
Oh my God!
It was a particularly challenging day, blustery crosswinds, heavy rain, poor visibility. Air China continued their approach, struggling with the crosswind and the visibility. They encountered at very low level some downdrafts close to the ground. One downdraft was at 6 seconds before impact, and the pilots were able to react to that and recover the aircraft. And then just 2 seconds before impact, they encountered another downdraft, which they tried to react to, but the time was not available, and the aircraft impacted the ground with a vertical speed of about 18 feet per second, which is roughly twice the normal descent rate.
Guy's having a hard time.
Oh my God! It's crashed!
As the plane crashes, the right wing and engine detach from the fuselage and burst into flames. Fire crews are quickly on the scene and extinguish the blaze. Of the 315 people on board, just 3 are killed. The Hong Kong Civil Aviation Department's report blamed pilot error for failing to arrest the high rate of descent. China Airlines disputed this ruling, citing the cause as wind shear. Balancing the demands of the aviation industry to keep flying with the challenges posed by nature is all about managing risk. Natural hazards are one of the few things that can stop us from flying. Airlines are swiftly investing money into systems that might prevent accidents and delays caused by nature. They know their ultimate success depends on it, because airlines have already experienced the havoc nature can wreak, bringing many to the brink of financial collapse.
These are unprecedented precautions, the biggest shutdown of UK airspace since 9/11.
Grounded passengers fill the departure lounges of American airports as well tonight.
In 2010, a volcano in Iceland brought the aviation industry to its knees. Over the course of 8 days, massive volcanic plumes form an ash cloud up to 6 miles high and spread across 220,000 square miles of European airspace. Over 100,000 flights were canceled at a cost to aviation of over $1 billion. Many in the industry were furious. The UK's Civil Aviation Authority, following the advice of international organizations, say they took the safest option in unprecedented circumstances. Controversy in Europe still surrounds the decision to close down one of the world's busiest airspaces. But one pilot knows all too well how dangerous flying into volcanic ash can be. June 24th, 1982. A nighttime British Airways flight from Kuala Lumpur to New Zealand is above the Indian Ocean when things start to go wrong.
My flight engineer said, number 4 engine's failed. He then says, number 2's gone, number 3's gone, we've lost the lot.
Within a minute, all 4 engines fail.
And there we were at 37,000 feet over the Indian Ocean, no engines going. I have no idea what has happened to the engines, except that they'd stopped.
From an altitude of 37,000 feet, the aircraft will glide for just 135 miles. The nearest airport at Jakarta is out of reach. The crippled plane is in a long, excruciatingly slow fall through the dark night into the ocean.
We were within 12 to 15 minutes of ditching in the sea, and I'm afraid we were dead.
Throughout the 16-minute descent, the crew desperately tries to restart the engines. Then, after 92 miles of gliding,
we come down to 13,000 feet, and number 4 engine started up. We had to wait another minute and 20 seconds before number 3 started up. And then 1 and 2 started 30 seconds after that with a ginormous roar. So after 16 minutes, though, we were back on the 4 engines.
Fearing the engines would fail again, Captain Moody heads for the nearest runway outside Jakarta and makes an emergency landing. All on board survive. To date, this is the longest ever glide by a 747.
We were all relieved. I was relieved when we touched down at Jakarta. We didn't know what was happening. It was the unknown. We wanted to know what had happened to us.
An investigation into the cause reveals why all 4 engines suddenly failed. Volcanic ash. Earlier that day, a volcano southeast of Jakarta erupted. Its ash plume was blown directly into the plane's flight path, choking the engines. By dropping into clear, denser air, the volcanic material was blown free, and the crew's efforts to restart the engines finally paid off. Experiences such as Captain Moody's flight made the aviation authorities cautious after the eruption in Iceland. Even though radar networks had mapped out the ash cloud to a discrete band across northern continental Europe, the authorities decided to close the entire airspace because radar only picks up larger ash fragments. Fine powder-like ash particles can't be detected, but they're just as dangerous.
Well, actually, I've got some volcanic ash here in front of me, and this stuff is made of silicates, and it can create a very fine, powdery substance, micron size, which can disperse in the atmosphere over long distances and stay there for a long time. And this stuff can get into jet engines, which operate at temperatures in the region where these silicates melt. So when they melt, they fuse into the hot parts of the engine, causing the airflow to decrease, and eventually the engine will stall and flame out and lose power completely.
The complete shutdown of European airspace cost airlines over $1 billion. A pretty good motivation for them to find a solution to the invisible ash problem. Especially since the mother of all Iceland's volcanoes, Katla, is overdue for an eruption. Scientists predict it could close down airspace for months, maybe even years.
Volcanic ash is really always going to be a problem for commercial air travel. Turbine engines have to run on oxygen. Volcanic ash abrades engine components very rapidly. It's one of the most dangerous phenomena that can be encountered in aviation today.
Airliners can't fly through volcanic ash, so we need to know precisely where the ash cloud is. Norwegian scientists are currently testing a technology called Avoid, which uses infrared cameras on the exterior of a plane to detect tiny ash particles. Developed with the British airline EasyJet and European manufacturer Airbus, it's in the final stages of testing. If successful, it could soon be installed on some airliners.
We're guaranteed to get eruptions. Aviation is increasing, so this is just, you could say, an accident waiting to happen, an accident we're trying to avoid.
This isn't a solution, but a compromise and an acknowledgement that nature still controls the skies and can bring us to a grinding halt with little warning.
Weather is always going to be there, and that is one thing that human beings can't control.
You know, with regards to weather, we have an expectation as a passenger that we just want to get from point A to point B, and whatever's going on outside with regards to weather, we don't care. We just want to get there. Technology is enabling that to a large degree, but it will not. We'll never get to a point where we will be weatherproof.
The most troubling thing is, as we try to fly everywhere on the planet, in all kinds of weather, as we become less tolerant of delay and inconvenience, we're actually making ourselves more vulnerable to nature. It's the one element of flying that we can't change, and we do well to remember that.